Hello and welcome to another episode of the Pocho podcast. This is Albert Campa. This is episode actually 30, going on episode 30 for today, and I have a special guest. We have Marcelo Parodi
Yeah,
as our special guest today.
appreciate it, man.
And
Appreciate it, Albert.
yeah, thanks for coming on. Now, the initial I guess excitement that I had for having you on as a guest was I forget now. It's been a little bit on Twitter. The interaction with Wiso, and I believe it's his TikTok or something came up. Oh yeah, his
Yeah,
his
yeah,
dancing,
yeah.
his dancing on the U.S. national team jersey, the Mexico jersey, and his TikTok it came up and brought out that you were actually a Mexican. You're living in the United States, but you're born in
hmm
Mexico, and you're a U.S. national team fan. So I guess, but before
Correct.
we get into all that, let's sort of like the Pocho podcast way. We sort of try to understand the upbringing. Um, so how long did you live in Mexico for growing up?
Yeah. First of all, I agree, and this is why I also wanted uh, to be part of your podcast because I think that's a very interesting take on just like in general as human beings. So I I was born in Monclova, Coahuila, which is Coahuila is a state right below Texas. Um, my hometown is actually maybe like 7 hours away or something like that,
Yeah.
um, from Austin. And I lived in Mexico until I was 11 or 12 years old. We came to the States in 2000. I can remember if it was 2002 or 2003. But I remember we did see the World Cup in Japan, in Korea, Japan,
Yeah.
in Mexico. That's kind of like how I keep my memories through like soccer. So uh, the World Cup in 2002, we were in Mexico, and then I remember like right after that we came to the States.
Okay. So that's quite a bit of time over there. Yeah, I
Yeah.
recall. I recall the 2002 very well. Interesting times.
hmm
So you mentioned like you keep track of timelines by soccer. So obviously you grew up as a soccer fan. Where did that come from? Was that parents or uncles, or how did that, or just the natural living in Mexico type of thing?
Yeah, it's like my dad used to play soccer when he was younger, but he didn't make it like professional or anything. So he was really into soccer. Um, and then obviously like in school, that's the thing that you do. Like you don't do anything else but play soccer. So and it's just part of the culture. It's on TV everywhere, on chips, on commercials. Like uh, soccer is just embedded in the Mexican culture, which I love.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely the case. That's great. Just to give you some background, if you haven't listened to, I think one episode I sort of explained, not too in depth, sort of my history. I grew up, I was born in the U.S., but I grew up, I would say, since 11, 12 years old in Florida. So that's where like my
Mm.
memorable years, I guess. And this was in southern Florida. This is northern Florida, so there's pretty much no
Mm.
Mexicans. Football, American football was the main thing. Our I grew up playing soccer. My dad put me in soccer, so I sort of stuck with it. And I found one friend when I moved to Florida who played soccer as well, and so that sort of stuck with me. And I continued
Mhm.
out through high school, so I love the sport and everything. And it was sort of by luck, I guess, not really in the case with you, where of course it was going to happen. I think I could have very easily been an NFL, NBA fan, which I was at a
Mhm.
large part, but I did have like Frank Rijkaard poster in
Mhm.
my or things like that, some soccer
Dope.
stuff.
Dope.
But so yeah, that's the typical thing that I would assume from the Mexican culture. And then so then going into the United States, did you go towards the Austin area or
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, when we came to the States, I live in Austin. I've lived in Austin my entire life, like in the
hmm
States.
yeah.
Um, all around Austin, Central Austin. We moved to South Austin. We've lived in Round Rock. We lived in Cedar Park. We lived in Leander, which is where I live now. Um, so I've seen and lived pretty much everywhere in Austin. Um, and I love this place, man. This is the place to be. Um, and now I'm super happy, as you know. I have a podcast for Austin FC, which is a
Yeah.
brand new club, brand new MLS club. Um, and I'm super pumped about that because soccer is like my passion. It's my biggest passion in life. And uh, coming from where I'm from in Monclova, we don't have a soccer team. We actually have baseball. Like
Hmm.
baseball is huge in Mexico as well, and we're in my hometown. We have a team called Los Acereros de Monclova, which is in because in my city, a lot of the beginnings of the city was through steel production. Um, so the team is that's where the name comes from, Acereros, and
Yeah.
so we had baseball, but baseball to me is boring as hell. It's it I I can't understand how people enjoy it. I think people enjoy it more because of like what doesn't happen on the field. It's more like an experience. Um, but to me, like I can't sit there and watch 4 hours of baseball. So
Yeah.
I never really had a hometown team ever, and I felt kind of robbed of that. When I was younger, because like you don't know who to root for. You
Yeah.
just kind of like eventually pick a team, and
Yeah.
it's
It's
it's a
tough.
tough predicament.
Yeah. So I guess the Chivas or like the America
Hmm.
Chivas fans didn't, I guess, infest your city. You're up
Yeah,
north. You see Americanistas and Chivas fans all over the place, but
everywhere.
yeah, I guess that influence.
Yeah.
Or some people. I mean, that might be a good thing that some people are not those types of fans where they, uh, a team could be 100, 3,000 miles away and they would be their fan. Like I see people in the U.S. that are like Real Madrid fans and they've never been to
Right.
Madrid and stuff like that. So a hometown,
Hmm.
you're like a hometown guy. That's pretty good. And then of course Austin FC is coming, so you're all into that, and that's good to see the podcast, the coverage,
Hmm.
and that's really enjoyable. Myself, I guess to sort of expand on that, like, and we'll get into this with the whole United States national team and Mexico and all
Hmm.
that. I think in my case, being in the U.S., and this is what I've said before about Mexicans or, living in the U.S. or Mexican Americans living in the U.S. is sometimes they miss their culture, they miss their country, so then they become more passionate, even more so about what they left in Mexico, and so they become super passionate about the Mexican national team, and then they despise the U.S. or about Liga
Hmm.
MX and they despise MLS, and that's sort of, I mean, I don't really despise, but I sort of did not look too positively with MLS, and a lot of people
Hmm.
uh, see the partnership between Liga MX pretty positive, and they hope for it. Whereas I would like to see Liga MX go to South America, go back to
Right.
Libertadores and things like that. But
Agreed.
so going into, I guess, so your life in the United States now,
Hmm.
and you're looking for that home, I guess that home type of team. How did you come about to becoming, or you're passionate for soccer? How did you become about becoming a fan of the U.S. national team? How did that come into your life?
Yeah, that was actually like it's actually really tough because I'm sure you can relate. When you come from a different culture when you're younger, to a different country, it's like you have like an identity crisis. I think internally,
Mm,
um, whether some people cope with it better than others, like that's valid. Um, and for me, it was very tough because you know I came to the States as an 11-year-old with vague memories from my childhood, and I really like my conscious, which is what I put in the tweet. My semi-conscious adult life has been in the U.S.
mm-hmm.
So like I feel like I was formed here in the
Yeah.
States,
Yeah.
and it's tough because your family is still relishing on your culture that you left, but trying to assimilate to a new culture. And I when I was younger and I still consider myself Mexican,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Um, but then as soon as I turned like 20, 21, We became American citizens, and it was like I just I didn't really think of Mexico pretty much like at all because my life was here now. You know, like all my friends were here. I had really nothing except for family members who always visited anyway. So like it wasn't like to the point where um I was missing anything
Yeah.
from my home country. So when I was in my young adult life, I'm 28 now. When I was like 21, you know, I started kind of like I didn't feel Mexican, and I just embraced like the American culture, and that's when I started really rooting for the U.S. men's national team. And I mean, I still root for Mexico. You know, if they're my home country, so um, you know, if Mexico's playing, I want them to win. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, I understand the like if you've been away from a country and you're in a country that and you're passionate about soccer, you want to see what's closest to you. What's
Mm-hmm.
although the Mexican national team is pretty much lives a lot in
Yeah,
the
in the
United
states.
States. But there is MLS growing. The U.S. national team, even since 2002, of course, was huge
Mm-hmm.
in that World Cup, especially against Mexico, and then
Yeah,
maybe even a little bit after that. I
yeah.
remember. Yeah,
They went further in the tournament, which is insane. Um, than Mexico has ever been.
yeah, they got the Concacaf rival, which even so, in Mexico, Mexico was like the
The
favorite.
king.
It was a total surprise, and maybe they underestimated the United States in that. I was actually I'm 45, I guess. I was actually in
Mm.
Hawaii working, and that
Wow.
was pretty much my first. So I started like going into Mexico sort of a little bit late.
Mm.
I think after when I graduated high school, I started watching like tape of Mexico in the World Cup, but I didn't really know too much. And then Cuauhtemoc Blanco came on the scene, and then I was a lot more into that. But the 2002, I was in Hawaii watching it at a bar, the U.S. game, and there were just a lot of Mexican fans, very few U.S. fans. One of them was pretty much empty, and I was just there with a few other people watching it.
Wow.
And even in Hawaii, like I went to a different one because okay, so I was at this first place, I was watching it, and then the missed opportunities. Cuauhtemoc Blanco had. I think there's a handball that was should have been called, but then they scored. They started scoring the goals, and I just out of disgust, I left. And that was the first time I felt sort of passionate about like Mexico losing, so I left, especially against the U.S. And then I said, okay, let me go back to this different one just to see what the score is. And there's tons of Mexicans in this place, and they were all like upset, cursing at the
Rallied
TVs
up.
and stuff. Yeah, and it was like 2-0 by that point, and it was almost over. But so yeah, that's that's I guess that's an interesting interesting aspect of you left Mexico, you identify with this new place, and has it been inclusive? Like, have you? And I myself would see it very inclusive. Like, I've grown up in the deep South. I call it the deep South.
Hmm.
It's northern Florida or southern Alabama, whatever you want want to call
But
it.
still.
And I don't, I, I I don't look. I mean, if you want to get stereotypical, I don't look like full Mexican, but I'm pretty much,
Hmm.
I look Mexican, and so I felt, very included amongst like all kinds of people,
Hmm.
diverse people that have, their own beliefs or whatever. But I just, felt like one of them. How has your experience been with like, I guess, all the fans in Austin, are there, I guess I would assume there's a bunch of like Mexican American fans, but then there's a bunch of like the typical, I guess, American, that might be EPL fans, and then
Hmm.
all of a sudden Austin FC. How has your experience been with Austin FC?
Yeah. I think. I think a lot of people in Austin, I think, have felt the way that I have felt because, as you know, Austin doesn't have a major league sports team until now. So I think a lot of people were on the same boat of choosing to support and being passionate fans about other teams across the world. You know, like you mentioned the EPL. um, Real Madrid, Barcelona, and but it's been like as soon as Austin FC was launched, it was like people were just on board with our hometown. Uh, and I'm assuming people are still gonna support their teams who have they followed their whole life. Like for example, I'm a big Barcelona fan, um, and I'm always gonna love Barcelona. I'm always gonna love what they stand for, their philosophy, um, their essence as a club. I'm always gonna love it and respect it. But now that I have a chance to support my hometown, that's my team now,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of people in Austin feel the same way. From what I can see, because so I was part of the launch of a new supporters group in Austin called Los Verdes,
Hmm.
and in like we have a Slack and everyone's in there and we're planning all this stuff, and we introduce each other, and there's like about 100 people in there, and we heard every single person's like story of like who they support, you know all this type of stuff, and it was all pretty much copy paste. It was like, I'm a Liverpool fan, or I'm a Man City fan, or I'm a Barcelona fan, but now that there's Austin here, you know I'm an Austin FC fan, and
That's
I think
interesting.
that's just like across the board. We're all like super excited for Austin to have an MLS team.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting.
Hmm.
I guess instead of like if you're gonna be a fan of a team, it's gonna be a top team in Europe, maybe,
Hmm.
unless the team is in your local area, like LA would have, the Galaxy or LAFC. Then yeah,
Yeah,
that's pretty interesting. Um,
exactly.
so copy and paste. Yeah, that's
Yeah, it's a crude way to put it, but it it
yeah.
was very copy paste.
There's a trend. I do recall
Yeah.
going to. I myself went to. I didn't know about Los Verdes, but I did go to the Austin Anthem like a long
Hmm.
time. I think it was at the Domain somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I specifically went, and I think I got
You were there at
yeah,
the Irish bar.
yep, yeah, that was the
I
one.
w- yeah, dude, I was there too.
You were there, okay.
Yeah,
I think my wife was with me, so we would have been both there. I was trying to record some video and stuff.
yeah.
I think I might have it on YouTube even, but I was trying. I went there specifically to try to see, okay, what the type of fan was. I know the guy from Sergio, the guy from Pancho Villa's army.
Yeah.
I think he was. I mean, he's in Austin, but he was like really into Austin FC. I think he's got some. I don't know if you have some beef or something going on. I don't know what the deal is, but
With who?
Austin, I don't know if it was with the. At first, he was really hyped about the owners bringing Austin FC
Hmm.
and really catering to like the Hispanic fan base, because I think the whole model that he's talking about is modeling after LAFC. Like
Yeah.
LAFC, and this is sort of different because this is LA, although Austin is very, there's a lot of Hispanics in Austin, but
Hmm.
LA is just loaded, and they did the right things to cater to their right fan base, and they got plenty of good results. Like the that stadium
Oh
is
yeah.
rocking, and it's not just English; it's like Spanish and a mixture of everything. I think
Hmm.
that's what he was expecting and saying that's going to be happening in Austin. I don't know if he's sort of like been dissuaded from that, or I haven't really followed it too much, but that's what I wanted. I went to this to the Austin Anthems to sort of see that, but I saw quite a bit of like maybe EPL jerseys and things like
Hmm.
that. I did see the Mexican national team jersey on like a couple of teams, a couple of guys. I mean, not
Hmm.
too many though. But so that was yeah, that was pretty interesting. So hopefully, yeah, we'll see how that goes. I'm
It's
excited for
interesting
it.
you mentioned LAFC, because the person the engineer, the architect who designed LAFC Stadium is
Hmm.
also designing Austin FC Stadium.
Okay.
They hire the same dude, so I
Yeah.
think I think maybe our stadium can, if we can mimic, half of what LAFC did with their stadium, that would be super dope, because that stadium is really really badass.
Yeah, the way it's set up. I think the
Hmm.
so yeah. In addition to the stadium, I mean that's a huge aspect to it. But I appreciate the LAFC. I don't know if they have like marketing or what they do to get just like a fan base. And I've talked,
Hmm.
and I can't, I don't want to get this wrong. I've talked to some LA guys which say that LAFC is sort of like the, okay, no, LA Galaxy. I'm gonna get this wrong probably. LA Galaxy. This guy said LA Galaxy is the Chivas USA remnants,
Right.
and then LAFC is sort of like the central, like the rest of the guys, the Central Americans, some Mexicans. I don't know if that's right or anything, but they just come out and they're united and they're just passionate about this club. And if that can happen in Austin, like however they got to do it, like if it's marketing or whatnot,
Hmm.
if they can get like you said, just part of the same type of fan base going, and chants and everything going, and that would be pretty great.
Yeah, I think ultimately, and that's where groups come in. So, like you mentioned, we had Austin Anthem, and that wasn't pretty. The A lot of people from Austin Anthem left Anthem
Oh,
to do Los Verdes.
oh, okay,
So I believe other MLS clubs have multiple supporters groups.
yeah,
Um, and Austin, I mean, we haven't even kicked the soccer ball yet, and there's already two supporter groups. Um, so I wouldn't be surprised if more supporters groups begin to kind of like flourish. And it's really like they're the ones that really help create that atmosphere and kind of like that infectious spread around the city, and to get that word of mouth, so that people who are maybe not into soccer, they could be like, well, like let me go catch a game and see what it's all about, and then for them to get hooked. Um,
hmm,
so I think it's a lot of their responsibility
yeah. So
to do that.
yeah, it's interesting. Two fan bases. That's good. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see what's going on in the future for Austin FC and how that plays out into the stadium with the
Hmm.
fans and everything. So just sort of changing subjects a little bit. So
Hmm.
tell me a little bit about like your greatest experiences or the reason why you love, I guess, the U.S. national team uh, and how that sort of plays a role in your soccer fandom.
Yeah, I think I would put it in a way that for me, it's more like a sense of belonging. Um, when I see the U.S. play, I I feel like I belong there.
Hmm.
So, and like the U.S. is not, it's not a powerhouse by any means of the word, in the world of soccer, but I just know that when there's a game going on, whether we win or lose, that's irrelevant. It's I just want to see the U.S. do good and progress. Because I feel connected to the culture, to the country, to the people. Um, so in terms of experiences, um, like I was my first World Cup where I was really rooting for the U.S. men's national team was in 2010, in South Africa. That was like, um, so I mean, to add a different level to it,
Hmm.
to my sense of identity crisis. My family's Italian, like from my parents' side, from my dad's side
Yeah.
mainly, um, and that story is actually really interesting. So when the World War was going on, my great my grandparents immigrated from Italy to Argentina, and then when that was going on, with the Nazis and all that stuff,
Yeah.
Argentina was trying to get rid of, because a lot of Nazis went to Argentina.
Yeah.
Um, Anything that was uh, related to like Italy, they were kind of like seen as like, you know, as not good.
Yeah.
So they had to leave Argentina. Then they went to Nicaragua, and then they were actually pretty successful in Nicaragua. And my family has been involved in politics a lot. So they were part of the revolution in Nicaragua with the Sandinistas and all that stuff going on.
Hmm.
So then they had to flee Nicaragua, and that's when they came to Mexico. And then my dad was born in Mexico.
Okay.
So my family traditionally has always celebrated like Italy and Italian, um, uh, like Italian culture, Italian cuisine. Um, you know, like we have a lot of Italian. I don't know what word to use, but like my grandma spoke Italian. Her mannerisms. My grandpa as well. Like it's all very like Italian.
Italian influence, I guess. And
Italian influence,
yeah.
yeah. So we also rooted for the Italian national team when I was younger. So
Roberto
I've always
Baggio.
rooted, yeah, yeah, Roberto Baggio, all those people. I've always rooted for like Italy, Mexico, and U.S. essentially.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah, that's
So yeah, but when we came to the States and that, like how I talked about how I felt like I was more American. Um, that resonated, during World Cups, and in 2010, that's when I was like, I really felt it. I really felt American, and um, that's what tipped the balance for me. And I knew I was like, okay, I'm I'm picking, and it's gonna be the U.S. No more, no more Italy, no more Mexico. Of course, when Mexico and Italy play, of course, like I'm gonna watch, and um, I want them to win. But uh, that's really when I chose the U.S. was in 2010.
yeah. I'm trying to think of some good U.S. highlights. Like I have a bunch of negative, and I was just looking at the 2010.
Yeah,
Uh, like okay, so not to be too negative,
go for
but
it, man. Go for it.
okay. So when I think of okay, so let me just start with a positive, then a negative.
Yeah,
The 2-0 is great. Like the land,
yeah.
the pictures are always in my mind. The pictures are always like regurgitated a lot of times of Landon
Hmm.
Donovan getting that header
Yeah,
and then just sinking it for Mexico. In 2010, the 1-1 against England. Of course, that's a great, that's a great result. I
right.
remember like it's a photoshopped article, I believe, of on the like a front page of a newspaper. I forget what it was, USA Today or something. It's a Photoshop one of the U.S. wins 1-1 against England, and just sort of making fun of like of like the passion, like the over excitement of a draw game, which
that's
is
that's funny. That's pretty funny.
but the okay, so Ghana, right? Like, wasn't that
That
the
Ghana
game?
game.
That
Hmm.
Ghana game was pretty awesome. Where it didn't Landon Donovan like run down the line, pass it, or he received the pass. I forget who, and
Hmm.
a late goal.
Blasted it.
So there's some good moments. I remember in one of the World Cups against Italy, Brian McBride was getting
Brian
busted
McBride with
up.
that header,
Well, he was
and
getting busted up, like
yeah,
by I forget the guy's. I don't know if it was Gattuso or it was one of those rough dudes
he
from
was
Italy.
bleeding.
He was bleeding all up, but he kept on. He was a baller, man. He kept on playing, and he
Brian
was,
McBride was dope. He was
yeah.
cool.
So there's definitely some good aspects. I want to get your input on this thought that I had. Like right
Hmm.
now, I see the U.S. and maybe it's the Mexican Americans that are pushing this. That the U.S. needs to like bring in more Mexican Americans. That diversity isn't enough, and I think that the push is to do like a more uh, technical type of player instead of like in the past when Bruce Arena was with the team. It was more like you're disciplined.
Physical.
The
Yeah.
lines were set. There was discipline amongst the lines. You're not gonna like push too far forward and get caught.
Hmm.
And like you said, the physical aspect of it,
Hmm.
where a lot of people in Mexico would say, "Oh, you guys are bunkering and you guys are just like a defensive team and you don't have
Hmm.
any skill." But if that's what gets you the results, that's what's gotten you the farthest in the World Cup with Bruce Arena. And a lot of people hate Bruce Arena.
Hmm.
nowadays. But that seemed like the good type of style for the American skilled player. Or do you think that that the U.S. should progress into more like a skill based, like Pulisic is definitely skill based, man. That dude could dribble, he's got good touch,
Yeah.
but like you have players like oh, was it one touch? I think there's a meme on is it Sardes or
Yeah,
someone else
Saldes.
where like his one touch is like his first touch is like total
Terrible.
horrible and stuff, and people make fun of
Horrible.
it. Should they go to like a more touch based technical type uh, tiki taka even type of game, or should they be more disciplined like in previous years?
That's a fantastic question. And I think you nailed it with that question because I think the U.S. is having an identity crisis,
Mm,
the U.S. men's national team, because you said it perfectly. The U.S. mimicked a lot of, England. And England, we know that England has never been a team to be flashy, to be very technical. It's always been very physical, just like the EPL.
yeah,
It's a very physical way of playing. Very set lines, 4-4-2. I mean, they love that stuff over there and crossing it to the strikers. Um, so I think the U.S. was good, following that same style. But I think that football is now much more modern, and you have to modernize to progress. Um, we've seen it a lot with it's just soccer is it fluctuates. It's never really staying the same for too long. Um, I think if the U.S. men's national team decided to go with Greg Berhalter, who they know how he plays, he's said it many times. He sees it of a more fluid system, a classic 4-3-3. Very very technical, like you said. Um, they knew what they were getting into. So for me, it would seem. How about cursing on your podcast?
that's fine.
It'll seem kind of fucked up if they kind of just randomly, just because some results are not going good, to just pull the plug and say, you know what, Berhalter, you're out. We'll get somebody else. Um, so I think they need to stick to their guns, stick to Berhalter, stick to the system because there are younger players who are coming in who are more technical. You mentioned Pulisic. Um, there's Gio Reyna, who is the son of Claudio Reyna, who's going to be our sporting director.
Yeah,
Um, Gio Reyna is fantastic as well. You have Weston McKinney, Tyler Adams, Tim Weah, so a lot of young players who are much more technical, and I think it is doable, but you need patience. Like you're never gonna get results if at the first sign of adversity you change your mind. You got to stick to your guns. You have to trust your system, and I think the U.S. can definitely evolve into a more technical way of playing. And there were a lot of people are calling, for example, for Jose Mourinho to come to the U.S. Like he would be like an ideal coach for the U.S. But again, you would be taking two steps back, and because Mourinho, I love the dude. I think he's great for the sport. I think he's a little outdated, and
mm,
you can,
yeah,
you know, teams like Klopp, like Klopp's teams, Guardiola's teams, they're much more dynamic and they've won more. You know,
yeah,
so I'm a big proponent of Berhalter changing the system, being more fluid, being more technical. I think the U.S. can do it. You just need patience.
yeah, yeah. That's a good point. I was
What
sort
do you
of
think?
I was sort of leaning towards the well, this is sort of maybe my bias, my Mexican bias or whatever.
Hmm.
I was sort of leaning towards going the old way, or not fully going the old bunker and like Bruce Arena type of way.
Hmm.
But I guess it stems from my confidence in the American player to be able to gain that type of technical ability to implement that well. I think it can be possible, like you said, in the United States, because it's done like the United States excels at so many sports.
Hmm.
But I think, and I've said this on other, like on our Cantina podcast and other things where we argue about MLS and all this stuff. But the issue I have with the U.S. is that kids, in a difference from like Brazil or Mexico or Argentina, kids don't
Hmm.
grow up for the most part with a soccer ball at their feet at
True.
all times. And sure, you can go to like your parents will put you in, and then once you're big enough, you'll go to play American football or basketball or something. But when you are able to play with a soccer ball, like in your house or in the street or in a park, and it's the number one sport where you're like always doing it. Like I would go down to visit Mexico. Like I recall
Hmm.
going to like San Miguel de Allende, and I would just go and
Hmm.
get like an ice cream at the park, and there'd be kids playing with some raggedy ball in between like in the park in between in
Yeah.
between like trees and all these places, like getting the ball stuck in all kinds of areas. And I've never seen that in the US. And that from those kids doing that, they gain touch on the ball, they gain that technical skill. And I've even played with
So
like
true.
Mexican kids going back, like in the little cement fields with goals and stuff. And just the ideas that they have on the ball are totally different than what me growing up in the US have seen, even from other like pretty good American teams, even in in high school or traveling team levels. But I think, like you said, it should be the progression should be there to where you got to do it. You got to rely on that type of tactics, I guess.
You bring up a great point, honestly, and I think it's certainly a proof of that. A proof of that is the best players who are in the U.S. men's national team now. They went abroad very early, um, because uh, we don't have that skill set here when you're young, and I totally agree. I think that's probably why that old bunker down system was so effective, is because it's simpler. Like it's like you don't have to be
Hmm.
like a tactical genius to implement or to execute. So that's a fantastic point.
Yeah, I
Um,
just I just wonder how
mhm.
far it can actually get. Like if the U.S. wants to win a World Cup, and they stick to that, how far would it actually get them? Because you see the England's, they don't
Hmm.
really, they're not really an overachieving team.
Hmm.
Maybe Italy. I mean, Italy did win.
Catenaccio. Yeah, they got 4 World Cups playing that way.
Yeah, so that's a good thing for them. Also, although like the latest World Cup that I remember them winning,
They
they were
blew.
they resorted to the dark arts
Yeah.
against Zinedine Zidane, which if you got to do that, that's what you got to do, and that's I can appreciate that. So yeah, it's fun stuff. One other thing that I wanted to mention, like a highlight moment that my Mexican American fanboys are gonna not like, is the Miazga where he insulted Diego Lainez with the height. I love that
Yeah.
man. I don't care. I mean, he did get like juked and he got upset or whatever
Mm.
by Lainez, but I have no beef with him doing that, but I actually laugh when I see that stuff. And you see like a lot of people like getting upset, like, "Well, you got Juke Yazga," or like Edson Alvarez comes and goes and protects him. Yeah, go Edson, you're our team captain and all this stuff. No, man, Miazga got that dude. No matter what, man, he
He
joked him
did.
really good.
I think that's fine. Like it's part of the sport. Like I love when that shit goes down on the field.
Yeah,
You know, um, I'm short, for example. I found that hilarious. Like if somebody did that to me, I'd be like, all right, touche. Like, that was
yeah,
pretty fucking good.
you got it. Yeah, it goes back to like and I look up to that's why I like Cuauhtemoc Blanco.
Yeah.
When he would play the U.S., like he would like I think with Kobe Jones and Azteca, or with a lot of players, he would like bow up to people, like
Mhm.
fake try to hit them, and and I love how he like during a free kick he would like fake try to kick it and make people like try to block it and stuff.
I
And
love Cuauhtemoc.
yeah, it's just that attitude, and that's what the U.S. and they can't be like. Well, this happened for a while with the U.S. with the stare from Onyewu on Borghetti and
That's true.
previous
Onyewu
things.
was That dude was beast, man.
Yeah, that guy was just a presence, man. That's and that type of stuff, and especially because U.S. had Mexico's number for
Hmm.
a while. It was due to just that solidity. I remember playing in the U.S. Like my skills match up with a lot of like how Mexico when I was growing up with how the Mexico style of play.
Hmm.
So if I ever had like a huge center back, a huge gringo that was just like a beast in the center, man, I would have a tough night. It wouldn't be fun, and I feel the frustration of the Mexicans when they would like they would be like pounding on the knocking on the door all game long, and then like in the 80th minute, U.S. would come back and score like one goal or two goals, and so many friendlies, and yeah.
So many times that happened, dude.
So anything else that you wanted to get off your chest? Any topics that you wanted to discuss before we finish the podcast?
Um, no, man, I just wanted to thank you for, um, when that Twitter thing happened. It was pretty hilarious, and I was pretty triggered when with some of the responses from people
Oh yeah,
because people are just so quick to just be like fucking rude. Um, but I appreciated that you like immediately were like, "Oh, I talked about this in my podcast," and then I watched it immediately. Like when you said, thanks to me for like helping with the conversation. Um, and I just really appreciated like your point of view and how like you approached it. Um, and it certainly made me like very interested into like this topic. So I appreciate you for doing that.
yeah. I don't. I mean, I I I enjoy your your being. I guess you're the type of fan you are because I don't know if I'm a contra. I mean, people say I'm a contrarian in the whole
Mhm.
Liga MX English, L3 English, community. I don't. They're just so passionate about Mexico that they'll hate on everything else, and it's
True.
all about like a whole Mexican, like how Mexican are you and all this stuff. And I remember we so long ago. I don't know if you saw it, but I think it was a U.S. game versus Mexico somewhere up north, and there was a U.S. fan. He was I don't know. I don't think he was Mexican. He might have been Central American, and he was saying like they were chanting him and some other guys. They were like chanting against all the Mexican fans, and they were chanting "Estados Unidos te da de comer."
Oof.
It was a clip. It's a video clip that went
Oof.
we posted along. I mean, he took the video. I'll give him credit, and he got that dude. And that dude used to be on Twitter. I think he like they they raged on him and stuff. And I guess he like deleted his account. I don't know if they doxed him or whatever, but they were going
God
crazy.
damn.
And I don't like that, man. I mean, I understand and fully support someone in the U.S. who's a
Mhm.
U.S. national team fan, and even if they were born in Mexico or born in Argentina or born wherever, and you can't say, oh well, why don't you root for your home country, Brazil, instead of like the U.S. team which hasn't won anything, or yeah, I
Mhm.
just don't agree with that. So, like a lot of this over passionate and over like I'm so Mexican and like every day I tweet about like the tacos I eat or all this stuff. I just find it silly because these guys are in the US.
I
But
know. And that's the beautiful thing, it's like that's the beauty of cultures. How we're all humans, and but depending on where we're from, geographically, like it changes who you are as a person. And like it's at the end of the day, like it's just a game, dude. Like it's not that deep.
yeah. Yeah, well, I appreciate you, man. It's like it's finding you is like a diamond. It's like searching for a diamond in the midst of all these coals and stuff. So it's good to talk to you. Thanks for coming on. So your podcast, what is it called again? The Big
My podcast is called Bright Verde.
Part Verde.
Um, you can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube as well, and we're growing. So if you're interested in Austin FC, check out my podcast, Bright Verde.
All right. And so thanks, Marcelo, for coming on. Also, you're with the Austin FC supporters group. What is that called again?
Los Verdes.
Los Verdes. Okay.
Check out Los Verdes. A lot of good stuff. A lot of good stuff coming very soon.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
hopefully the Austin FC, we'll see how that does. We didn't get too much into league stuff, but yeah, I'm excited about MLS and the future things that come up. Maybe another time we'll discuss about the Mexican players going to the MLS. There's a lot of
Yeah,
stuff that
dude.
we've talked about, but yeah, thanks for coming on, Marcelo. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
Thanks, Albert. Appreciate it, man.